Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So just another clickbait velocity banking review about how banks will hate you if you use a home equity line of credit, like in the manner that I'm going to describe, which is called velocity banking. And if you want to see how a bank wants you to use a home equity line of credit, just go to any major bank's website, and then just do the exact opposite of what they want you to do. So I'm on Bank of America's home equity webpage, and it says unlock the possibilities using your home equity. Fast and flexible access to cash for home improvements, large purchases, and more. And here's the key word here, large purchases. The reason why they say home improvements is not because they care if your home is improved or not. It's because they know if you make a home improvement, that's a large purchase and they like that. And then once you make that large purchase, the next step for you, or what they're hoping for you to do, is just make minimum payments on that line of credit, right? And that is essentially enforced by society and culture by telling you you need to have a savings account and have 3 to 6 months of savings. And a lot of people out there who are on the struggle bus because they follow this plan, right? So basically, they get a home equity line of credit, make a large purchase, and then also have a savings account. And they're not doing velocity banking. We'll go over velocity banking as soon. So now I want to just show you an example of this again, because people fall into the bank's trap all the time. So here we're in debt free, right? This is about a year ago, but how do you get out of Heloc debt? And I took out a Heloc prior to the Fed interest rate hike in order to pay off our debt and to increase our home's value with the upgrade. You see that? Increase our home's value with the upgrade. That's part of the struggle bus, right? If you don't need, if your kitchen, bathroom, your house is safe and functioning, no need to upgrade your home unless you're going to sell it, right? Unless you're going to sell it. No need to do that. But that they got you there. Home improvement, large purchase, and somehow you're struggling, right? Our HELOC loan is now becoming unmanageable with this increase. His payment went from $300 to $700 a month. We have excellent credit. The interest rate on our house is only 3.25%, balance of 193. So we chose out not to do a cash out refi in order to preserve that rate. The HELOC rate is almost 9%, and we owe 87% or 87,000. I feel stuck, stupid, and can't find a way without cashing out everything in order to pay it down since we don't have enough to pay it down. Is anyone else going through something similar? Did you find a solution other than wiping out your savings? See, this person is ashamed to wipe out their savings, but what we're going to do is wipe out our savings, okay? Now, I don't know how much savings this person has, but this person is essentially ashamed to wipe out the savings, and that's what essentially velocity banking is. So, you see how I pretty much predicted what other people are going through when they struggle with the home equity line of credit? Large purchases, and they have a savings account. So, what is velocity banking? All it is a debt payoff strategy using a line of credit as your main operating account. So this person here has a HELOC, has a home equity line of credit, but they're not using it as their main operating account, and that's why we're struggling. How do I know if they're not using it as your main operating account? It's because they have savings, and in order for us to pay off our debt quickly, we're going to have our line of credit essentially as our new savings account. So in order to do velocity banking, we only need two things. Number one is a budget, and then number two is our line of credit as a main operating account. Now I have written a pseudo budget that would be similar to what this person would be going through. Good money, a lot of expenses, less than $1,000 of savings, and things are getting a little bit tight, right? And we have a HELOC at $87,000 at 9%. Two credit cards, maybe auto loan, mortgage. Now I know this person has a mortgage of $193,000 at 3.25%, but I'll just make it 300,000 because that was the number I was using last time. So let's just work with me here. Again, we don't have to be very exact and try to predict what this person's numbers are. But so here we have a home equity line of credit. And what is a home equity line of credit? All it is a financial tool where you can borrow money, pay back, and use it over and over again. And in order to get better rates, because sometimes lines of credit can go from 8% to 30%. We're going to put our home equity as collateral, because if we don't put it as collateral, we might get the line of credit might cost us a lot more. Let's say 15%, right? So all a home equity line of credit is a tool where we can borrow money, pay it back, and use it whenever we want. And we're going to use it as our main operating account for today, and that's what we call velocity banking. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And so right now I put the numbers here. We'll assume $100,000 limit, $87,000 balance. 0, and this is month 0, okay? And so now we're going to do the velocity banking version of this. So this is the average American, where we're using our checking account as our main operating account, whereas here with velocity banking, it's going to be our line of credit as our main operating account, okay? So the most important thing to understand is that we're going to have 0 savings, or one of the most important things, right? Because as you see right here in this Reddit post, it's let me just see right here. Did you find a solution other than wiping out our savings? Right? This person is conditioned by the society that we have to have savings, right? That's how they get you. They get you with a big purchase, make minimum payments, and have some savings, and then you wonder why you're struggling. You're on the struggle bus, okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is make sure we got the 0 savings, and then we're going to re-engineer our expenses. So let's go ahead and copy the expenses right here. And I just want to emphasize that velocity banking is a debt payoff strategy, right? The more debt that we pay off, the more of this thing called cash flow that we get. And what is cash flow? All it is income minus expenses, right? So in the beginning, it looks very similar to this right here, the savings, right? But once we start to use our velocity banking account as our main operating account, aka our line of credit, our main operating account, then this cash flow number is going to increase. That's the whole point of the strategy. So we don't focus too much on the interest rate, although it's somewhat important. We focus on this cash flow number. Okay, so the actual strategy itself, right? I'm going to show you the actual strategy. You're going to put your entire paycheck into that line of credit, and that does 2 things. Number 1, it satisfies the minimum monthly payment. Number 2, it minimizes the interest, because when you put your entire paycheck in there, guess what? Since the interest is calculated on the average daily balance, right? It's calculated on the average daily balance. It's going to have the lowest balance when you put your entire paycheck in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see what happens when we put that entire $7,000 in here, right? So when we do that, does this HELOC payment matter anymore? If your HELOC is $700 and you're putting in your entire $7,000 into that home equity line of credit, guess what? Because it's your main operating account, this don't matter anymore. And we somehow went from $846 to $1,500 in one swoop, right? And then guess what? We have 22,000 here. So 22,000, can we put this 22,000 into this home equity line of credit? No, we cannot. But what we can do is we can put this 10,000, right? So this 10,000 right here, and then this is going to be 97,000, okay? So we're at the very end of that home equity line of credit limit, and just do a debt transfer, and guess what happens? Bam. So we went from 800 to 1,800 in one swoop without having to really do anything, right? So now let's go ahead and do this. And we're gonna just do some calculations. So the next month's balance is based on the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest, right? Whoopsie. G2 plus H2 minus 1896, okay, 0.18. And then we're going to go ahead and calculate that interest, which is based on that average daily balance. All right. Whoopsie. Did I do this right? So G3. Okay, I screwed up. Let me get the average daily balance again. Average. Right. All right. Finally, I got that. Okay. And then we multiply the interest rate, which is 0.099%. You can see that right here. Okay. And then we divide it by 12. All right. So divide by 12. All right. So let's go ahead and keep paying this off. Right. And what we can do, okay, is that once we have enough for this $12,000, okay, then we could put it into the line of credit and increase our cash flow again, right? So that's one thing we can do. Let's just keep going, and bam, bam, bam. Okay, and at this point, it probably wouldn't be like $12,000. It probably be like 10,000. In fact, we can just take a look right now. We go to bank rate, minimum credit card payment calculator, and see based on their payment schedule tables what the actual balance of that credit card is after several payments. So 12,000 and then 27, okay, 27%. And let's just go in here, calculate, show payment schedule, and we can see, let me just take a look how many. So after 7, what would the balance be? 7 would be about 11 grand. Okay. So 11 grand. So is there enough room for 11 grand at this point here? Okay. Just as long as it's 100, we should be fine. And we could see it barely gets below the 100, right? So we move this 11 grand of our credit card, and guess what? This turns to 0, okay? So even though we're at the limit of that line of credit, okay, we've increased our cash flow, right? And our cash flow is now, let's redo this, 2286.18. You might be asking, where did I get this number? It's right here, 2286.18, okay? And so let's go down here, and then we just keep going, right? We just keep going until we pay this, keep paying this sucker off, right? So, whew, all right, so now we could just keep going, and the only thing is we only have these two left, the auto loan and the mortgage. And if we keep going, depending on, again, this is only a 5-year loan, right? So if, it takes us a couple of years to pay this off. We don't have to necessarily put the auto loan into the line of credit. We just keep making payments. In fact, how much is 5 years? 5 times 12, 60. So just as long as it's before 60, right? So if we keep going, okay. So ironically, okay, I don't know if this is ironic or not. The home equity line of credit takes about 5 years to pay off, along with those 2 auto loans, right? Or not the 2 auto loans, the 1 auto loan. So you're going to be at this point at 5 years. This is paid off. So let's just do this 5 years, and we pay off the 2 credit cards and the auto loan. So that's 22,000. Actually, let me just do this. 22 plus 22 plus 87, right? Plus 87. Okay? So that's $131,000 in 5 years. Okay? It's $131,000 in 5 years. So even though we didn't put the auto loan in the line of credit, I don't really see it as exactly necessary, right? Because the auto loan may not produce that much cash flow compared to the amount of the, what's it called, loan that we pay off. And I know this based on something called the cash flow index. I'm going to skip that for now, but just be aware that sometimes it might just be easier because we had such a high balance not to move the auto loan here, okay? And if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. So it takes us 60 months, which is 5 years, to pay off that home equity line of credit and pay off our auto loan. Again, we didn't, in this case, we didn't move the auto loan to home equity line of credit, and I don't think it was necessary, but it paid off in 5 years. And then this also paid off in 5 years as well because the $87,000 Heloc. Again, what if we never made those large purchases? Then we would have just focused on these 3 and got rid of them probably in like, I don't know, about a year or so, right? We would have been in a much better off position, which is why it's really important that we be resourceful with what we spend our home equity line of credit on. We don't want to make big purchases, and we don't want to just make minimum payments, or else we're going to be on the struggle bus. Okay? So now at this point, right, let's figure out after 5 years, how much do we pay off on this $300,000 mortgage? And let's go ahead and go to calculator.net, loan amortization. So loan amortization, and then we just type in the numbers, 300,000, 30 years at 6%. And here's the crazy part. You pay more in interest than you do on a loan in a 6% mortgage. So if you thought you're paying only about 300 and I don't know 50,000 for a house, you're paying almost double that, right? You borrow 300,000, you pay 347,000 after 30 years. And that's why there's a saying of be the bank, not the landlord, right? And there's another saying by not George Clooney, George Carlin, whereas he says they call it the American dream because you got to be asleep to believe it. Remember that one? That was right before he passed away. All right, so now let's take a look here and figure out at after 5 years what's the balance of that loan, right? One, and look at all this interest, 17 grand to 3 grand in principal. And if you don't know what principal, it's how much of the actual loan are you chipping away? Are you paying off, right? So 17 grand in interest. So another way to think of this is bank's profit versus how much of the loan you're paying off. Profit, 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 profit. And so after 5 years, you've paid off, you have a balance of $279,000 into the loan. Okay, $279,000. Now, at this point, you have two options, right? You can put this money, this $2,701, directly into a loan in the form of extra payment, or you can move parts of that principal to the line of credit. Either one is perfectly fine, right? Either one is perfectly valid, but here's why it might not be, well, I wouldn't say it's not in your best case to do it. It's just by statistics, they have statistics. It's very unlikely that people dump their extra cash into loans. And the reason for that is, though, even though it makes financial sense, it's about loss of control, right? So it's kind of like, and I've always made this analogy again, but I don't know if I should do it one more time. It's like making a left turn on a road, right? Making a left turn on a road, it makes sense, but companies like UPS won't ever do it because they understand and that you should make a right turn on a road because it's a lot safer as much as possible. So that's how I think about moving money into a line of credit. It doesn't make sense for most people because they see a higher interest rate, but it's just another way to get there, right? So what do I mean by that? So let's say, okay, that you move $10,000 of this mortgage to the principal. So let's say now it's 269K, all right? So why don't we move $10,000 into this line of credit, right? So plus 10,000, okay? And then let's see how long it takes us to pay it off. So about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 months, okay? And so how long, if we're just doing it according to the bank schedule, is it going to take us to go from 279 to 269? And again, the average person, I don't know if you knew this, takes about 52 years to pay off a 30-year mortgage because they either resell their home every 5 years, 5 to 7 years, or they refinance, right? So how long does it take to go from 279 to 269? About 2 years, right? So you can see it takes about 2 years to get there, whereas it took us, how long did it take us? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 months, right? So that's one way that you can do it, and this is also called the chunking method. And so I have this velocity banking calculator here to simulate, okay, to simulate this chunking method, right? So what we do is we just put in this information here, so $300,000, and what's the current balance right now? It's 279, right? 279. So let's go ahead and do that. And interest rate is 6. What is the payment amount? It is 1798.65. Let's go ahead and put that in there. And then let's put in our income. This person's income is $7,000. Okay, and what's our expenses? So our expenses is 2,500. It's everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off because that's already accounted for here. And if you don't know where I got this from Renatus. This is where I originally learned velocity banking from. And I'm an independent marketer, or they call us independent contracting marketer, meaning I sell their education and I get a commission for it. And it's where I originally learned velocity banking from. And if you do enroll, you can actually get this calculator from them for enrolling in their education classes. Now, as you can see here, it'll take us 6.3 years to pay off, and it'll be a $57,000 of interest we're predicted to pay. Now, here's really the most important thing. If you have a 6% loan, you don't want to put the entire thing into a line of credit because take a look at this, 6.3 years, 57,000, and let's say, we put the entire thing into that line of credit, okay? guess what? That doubles, right? So even though we save more money, we can actually save more money just by doing the chunking method because it's more resistant to interest rate changes, right? It's really weird how that works. So let's say I do like $7,000 chunk. It's probably going to be a little bit less than this, but see how much less. Oh, it's about the same thing, right? And so now, if let's say I do a 30% credit card and I use this with the credit card 30%, you see how little it changes, right? So it's about what, 8 grand more, was it? Yeah, about 8 grand more, even though it's 30%. But when you do a 10% line of credit and then you replace the whole thing, you're paying how much? About 50 grand more. That's why I say, like, for the most part, I think, you need to do the numbers and not just kind of blindly follow advice on the internet that you replace your mortgage with the line of credit. Okay, so 6.3 years. So let's take a look right here. So that's 5 years. So plus 6.3 years. Okay, so 6.3 plus 5 is 11.3 years to pay off $431,000. And usually, when I do these velocity banking simulations, it usually takes about 7 to 8 years to pay off everything. And I'll tell you why it's 11 is because we are on the struggle bus of making large purchases that are quite unnecessary, right? That's why we're on the struggle bus. So if we had never taken that home, if we'd taken out that home equity line of credit and just did velocity banking and used it for, let's say purposes of paying off our debt and not making those large purchases like home improvement, we would probably been okay. But because we spent so much money, $87,000 on home repairs, and again, unless you sell the home, there's no way that you can kind of get that gain or experience that gain immediately, right? Because equity doesn't really mean anything unless you can borrow from it or you can sell your home, okay? But if you borrow from it, you have to use it wisely. When you do borrow it, just like a credit card, you have to use it wisely, but most people don't, okay? So my point is that usually it takes us about 7 to 8 years to pay off everything, including the mortgage, but it took us 11 because we started off with $87,000 or not. Yeah, was it 97? Yeah, 97. No, 87 because I added the $10,000 of credit card debt plus the 10,000, and we're focusing to pay off all that debt. So that's why we're on the struggle bus. Okay, but yeah, so even if you pay things off in about 11 years, look at how much money we're essentially not paying to the bank, about 200 grand, right? 200 grand. So I guess they will hate you for doing this, right? Because their goal was to suck away your wealth so that you get so frustrated that you have to write on Reddit, right? Am I right? Wink, wink. Okay, well, that's it for today. Have a happy Friday, everybody. Again, I don't know if I should make a t-shirt or club that says "Banks hate me because I do this." Love making clickbait videos. Have a great day, and we will speak next time.